You're listening to the Chasing Tales Outdoor Podcast, where when you can't be in the outdoors, we bring it to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to a one-of-a-kind podcast. In fact, let me get this straight. Let me think about this. This will be the first podcaster I have ever had in my house. Ever. If you exclude Chase.
That's getting pretty specific. This
Well, I
is the first time
I was going to say it was the first
podcaster
podcast
with a 9.5 shoe size.
Maybe.
Has ever.
Maybe. Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, he wears the same shoe size as his wife, evidently.
This is true, I do.
Yeah.
She has large feet, though.
Or do you have small feet?
It's kind of a mixture of both. she got Greek feet.
Yeah, she's got Greek feet.
Her middle toe,
Yeah.
so my wife's middle toe looks like a finger.
Okay.
No, bro, like
legit.
Like legit. It's like the
Gotcha.
size of my. It's probably close to the size of my pinky.
We're gonna have to see a photo of this. That's kind of crazy.
It's. I think it's like.
You're talking about like that toe?
The middle one.
This one.
That one. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the second one. It's so long.
That's crazy.
Like, she has to wear bigger shoes because her middle toe is like freakishly long, and I think like you don't see it like unless you're thinking about toes.
Yeah.
Like you don't really like. It's not like you're like, oh my god, look at that toe.
Yeah.
But when somebody's like, hey, check out Hallie's toe, and you look at it, it's a really long
toe.
I think it's a Greek. It's like Greek.
You can frame it for whatever you want to. Our listeners have no idea. So it's Russian.
They're all
Russian. This one.
Yeah.
Mail order Russian feet.
Yeah, I bought her from a Russian website. And only because I liked her shoes and I could wear the same size.
Dual purpose, right?
Yeah,
Or your hunting boots or her hunting boots and her flip-flops.
Right.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got Parker McDonald. If you didn't already know that by now, Southern Ground Hunting. Messed it up earlier when I was talking to my wife. I had to get that right there, rectify the situation. Let's
talk about that real quick.
Okay, let's do it.
I know you're probably going to be like, he's the best deer hunter in all the land. You're going to give me this great intro.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to interrupt you because there's a pretty funny story. So I do graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
I own my own business doing graphic design, website design. And I had a guy reach out to me, super nice dude. And he was like, hey, man, I'm thinking about rebranding. His original brand was pretty cool. You know, it wasn't like specific to a region or anything. He was like, I'm thinking about going like Southern. It was like Southern Dirt or Southern Legacy or something like that. Like it's all Southern. He's like, I just feel like it would stick out more. I was like, let me tell you about something. And it was a hunting brand. I was like, let me tell you about something. I run a hunting brand called Southern Ground, and everybody who does something in the South puts Southern in front of their names. And so I get tagged in random stuff on Instagram that I have no business being tagged in. And other people get tagged instead of me. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Everybody has... I started a Facebook... or there was a new podcast that had come out, and it was Southern something or another. So, and they actually did a really good job. I listened to their first episode, and I messaged a whole bunch of different guys that have Southern in their name, and I named it Southern Blank. It's like
it's fill in the blank.
Like we all need to just rebrand.
Yeah,
just because this is getting a little bit out of hand.
Well, so you tried to anticipate my hosting, but you were off the mark. Unfortunately for you, I was about to sling mad shit at you because you haven't killed a buck.
I have
this year.
I've killed 2 bucks this year.
In Alabama.
I haven't killed.
You
one
haven't killed one out. That's your backyard, dude. That's your back 40. I mean,
I let 2 smaller bucks walk.
Yeah.
That I could have killed pretty easily.
Yeah.
I missed a really good deer this past. So what's today? Monday. I missed him on Friday morning. Mm-hmm. So shot a doe, which I wasn't planning on shooting another doe this year, but I was on an SOA hunt. So in Alabama, like y'all have in Florida, y'all have your quota hunts.
Yep.
We have these SOA hunts, and it's limited access. You pretty much get a whole unit. Ours was like 300 acres to ourselves. Just me and one other guy. I was his guest. He invited me to go. And they were like, hey, if a doe comes out, please shoot her. We have too many does on here. So I was like, okay. twist my arm. I'll do it. So this is why you don't shoot does when you don't want to. You didn't know we were about to get into the meat and potatoes of like tactics. But when you shoot does, it does hinder your opportunity to shoot bucks. So I shoot this doe, and she dies right there, like drops. I shot her right through the top of the shoulder, and it went out like.
Is that the one that made that awesome noise?
She made a terrible noise, yeah. Because it caught spine. So on the way in, it caught spine, but it hit all kinds of vitals on it. But it was such a close range shot, and I was elevated. She dies right there, and she's like making this terrible noise. And I go to turn off my camera because I got it. And I was like, sweet, we killed a deer today. That's awesome. And not 10 minutes after I shot, I look back. So she was with another doe. And that other doe ran off and was blowing and carrying on, doing all kinds of stuff. And she was still running around back there, and so I thought it was just her. And I hear a twig break, and I just look back. And I'm like, oh, it's a doe. And I look back, and it's just this freaking mondo, dude, like this huge buck standing at like 30 yards.
It's like 180, right?
And I mean, let's talk mondo. Let's talk mondo for Alabama.
Gotcha.
So he was legitimately probably 120 inches.
Yeah.
But 120-inch deer. Like, and that's being, like, honest about it. Like, he was probably a 120-inch deer. He was a good buck.
Right.
And so he's just sitting there looking at her, dead, right across the creek. She died on a creek crossing. And she's just laying there, and he's, like, looking at her. And you can tell he wants to come over.
Yeah.
Like, he really wants to cross, but he doesn't know what to think about
going,
this.
Susan, what you doing?
Yeah, hey, girl, like, is everything all right? You good? We good? Can I come over there?
You look a little peakish over there.
Where your boyfriend at? You like Mike and Ike's?
She was waiting for Jerome just to, like, bust out of the bush.
So I'm, like, got my bow ready. Like, I'm so ready to shoot this thing. And he comes... like he's about to cross, and he's kind of faced at me at this point. He's cleared the trees and stuff, though. Like, I can see him clearly. And he's standing right on the edge at 26 yards. I mean, like, wide open. I just need him to turn a little bit so I can do a nice 1/4-2 shot, hit those vitals. Well, then I see this Karen doe behind me, a different one, and she's, like, standing there, like, looking at me. And my wind's blowing right to her, like, right in my face, right to her. And she's like... stomping her foot. And I'm like, dadgummit, I'm going to have to shoot her. And he looks over at her, and she goes, whoosh, blows and runs over to him. And she's just like running around in circles. And I'm like, if he doesn't turn, I'm going to have to shoot him like straight up right in the chest.
Yeah.
So he
now you have a real heavy arrow build.
Yes. Yeah,
right. Like you wouldn't want to use two-blade rage on that shot. But
no, for sure.
You have punched through some serious mass with those arrows.
I don't like it. I don't like a straightforward shot regardless, because your chances of pass through are pretty low. But if you hit it, like if you hit it right
it's money.
there,
It's a high risk, high reward type situation.
And it's going to spray blood.
Yep. You got the hole on the bottom of the body, so it's going to go everywhere, head everything. Yeah.
So I didn't shoot him that way though. Like I didn't shoot at him that way. So he turns just a little bit to kind of just a nice 1/4-2 angle, and I shoot, and I don't know if I just didn't settle my pin. I really don't know what happened, but what it legit looked like is that my arrow curved away from him. Mm-hmm. Like, have you ever shot a bad fletching?
Absolutely.
And it like curves?
Yep. Especially when it comes off mid-flight, and for some reason it like just even affects it even worse.
Or if you like barely clip like a leaf or something, it's not gonna take it totally off course, but it's gonna throw it off just a little bit. And that's what it looked like my arrow did. Like it just curved away from him and missed him by like 2 inches. It missed vitals by about that much, but it missed his body by about 2 inches. It was a very narrow miss. And so I thought, I used the Zinger fletchings, and so I thought maybe it fell off mid-flight or something. But when I went and got my arrow, it was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Good. I mean,
was there any kind of like potential for like a twig to be in front of you or something? Just something weird happened? Is your bow on?
When you watch I mean, I killed a doe like 2 minutes before that.
That's true.
Like
maybe you torqued it, like maybe some hand torque or something.
Could have been.
Yeah.
It was at a weird angle. So it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
He was, I guess, so I'm in the saddle and he was in about what would that be, like 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a weird angle, but not
crazy.
Not crazy. And at 26 yards,
yeah.
I mean.
A good podcaster is expected to make that shot.
Exactly. If you want something good to talk about. So I missed him, but I killed a deer that day. So it was a mixed bag of emotions because I'm always excited when I get to kill a deer. But when you miss one, a good one, probably would have been, he may have been my best Alabama deer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a good chance that he was my best Alabama deer, but if not, he was close second. He's a good buck, and he had this thick mass to him, like he was just a swamp buck. And I've never killed like a big, huge buck on swamp land.
Yeah.
So that's
my
cool.
bread and butter.
Yeah, you would have loved this place because it was. It's managed by the state, pretty well managed by the state because it's such a small piece and it's a special opportunity hunt. And so I was talking to Dave Owens today, actually, because I was curious.
Decent deer hunter.
Yeah, he's decent. Subpar turkey hunter, but he's a pretty decent deer hunter.
He's really got to work on that diaphragm.
Yeah, it's sounding a little rough these days.
A little raspy.
But his I think it's his fiance now, Courtney.
Yeah.
Is the wildlife biologist, or has been the wildlife biologist in that county. And so he was telling me about the place and kind of what she's done out there. And there was a certain type of thicket, and I don't know what it is. But these deer were just running the edges of it, man.
Really?
It's like I saw some of it out here actually when I was on my way to your house. I don't know if it's like birch or ash or something like that. It's not an oak, I don't believe, but they're about yay big. Not real big around. At the biggest, maybe like that, and they grow straight up and they taper on their way up, and it's thick. But there's not like briars and stuff don't grow in it, so you can walk through it.
Sounds
but
like
it's
tupelos.
I don't know what it is.
Are they relatively short trees?
Yeah. I mean, probably for the most part, like they probably got up to maybe 15 foot.
Yeah.
Or so.
Sounds like a tupelo. Sounds like I could be wrong, but it sounds like a tupelo gum swamp. So whenever they came in and they clear cut a lot of the cypress heads way back in the forever ago. One of the first things to come back and really dominate the area is Tupelo gum.
Like Tupelo
honey.
Mississippi? Is it Tupelo, Mississippi?
Maybe. You ever had Tupelo honey?
Uh-uh.
Oh, okay. That might be a regional thing. Tupelo.
Tupelo.
Yeah.
Gum?
I'm looking it up right now. Yep. Tupelo gum.
He did mention that they planted some type of gum tree.
Not quite. Did you see it over here on the road on your way, like right before you got to the house on the left side of the road?
I don't remember.
I got you. We've had dinner since then.
Yeah, somebody. I'll tell you what. If there's a listener, I believe there's probably no. It's not that. There was some of this.
Okay.
But it looked like I'll show you a picture of it. I got a picture of the stuff on my. That right there. It looks like some type of ash or birch tree.
Yeah.
You see how thick it is, though?
Yeah, for sure.
And then, yeah,
it's definitely not Tupelo.
On this picture, so...
Yeah.
You see it all right there?
It's a swamp head, for sure. Yeah.
And, it's planted there. You can tell it's planted there on purpose because it's a very straight lines running the edges. And those deer, man... They love it.
It's that hard transition.
It's that hard line transition. Yep. And I don't know that it offers them anything other than security cover.
Which, during hunting season, is a lot.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But, I don't think they really bed down in it.
Yeah.
Because it's fairly wet in it. It holds a lot of water. But they use it almost just like as a blocker for their travel. And so... it was cool. And then in that spot that I just showed you a picture of yesterday morning, I had a really good buck coming in. He wasn't as big as the one that I missed, but I found this spot, man. I was like, this is going to be it. This is the spot. There's like this tall CRP grass over here to the left, just like perfect bedding cover. And I'd actually, on my way into scout that afternoon, I jumped a doe in some of this tall grass, and I was like, oh, well, I bet they're all bedding right here. It's chilly enough, like the sun's not going to bother them. It's not going to get like super hot in there. It's chilly. You cannot see them if they're bedded down in there.
And you can't approach them without them hearing you
No,
either. Right.
You're absolutely not going to sneak up on them unless you know that they're there.
Yep.
And for the most part, you're not going to know. You're never going to know. Who's going to know?
Who's going to know?
No one's going to know.
No one's going to know. So I had
They're gonna know.
I had an old timer tell me that those swamp heads, the reason why they use them is because they can rely on thermals there regardless of the wind, so long as it's not like a certain degree of intensity. And if you look at those heads, and I think there's some serious validity to this.
Yeah.
If you look at those heads, you almost always have this hard transition line here. You'll have that head, and then you'll have like gallberry or palmettos mixed in with some grass area. And if you walk that edge and you take the time to slow down, and Brett and I witnessed this this past summer when we were scouting, when you walk that edge, maybe you've got a crosswind that's going like, let's say it's like 5 to 7 miles an hour to the west. When you've got that thing to your east and you stop, you can just feel it pulling right off that landmass. And it's maybe a foot of water max in there, but there's enough of it and it's shaded that you can count on a consistent thermal, and you have that edge.
Well, these deer in these type of areas, they're incredibly dependent on thermals because it's flat, and I say this, they're dependent on the water to be the thermal
correct. Yep.
Conductor, I guess would be the right thing.
Because you have no topography
in the hills.
Right.
They're dependent on the terrain, but out here they're using creeks and those swamp creeks. I don't know what you would necessarily call them, but they're not like running creeks. They're all
sloughs.
Yeah, looked great for duck hunting.
Yep.
And they're traveling those edges of those creeks. Every big buck I saw out there was traveling the edge of water, or like the edge of water that also have a lot of times these creeks would separate like these thickets from hardwoods from whatever this tall grass.
Right.
Anyway, so I jumped this buck, or I didn't jump a buck. I found this spot, set up there that evening, didn't see anything. I was like, man, this spot it had a 3-way transition, hardwoods, grass, and this thicket. And if you can imagine, on all those hardline transitions, there's a creek, and it split off. And so basically it just it separated all 3 of the transitions. I was like, man, this is just too good. It's also the first place that I found a scrape and a rub out there.
Oftentimes. I mean, go ahead.
And they don't rut till January. So I knew this has to be a spot. So yesterday morning I'm out there, and wind's perfect in my face all morning long. About 7:55 rolls around, and the birds start going nuts. I was like, there's deer coming. And I thought that the birds were going nuts behind me because I had a boggin on because it was cold. And sometimes when we wear a boggin, it like messes with your perception.
The direction.
Yeah, your sense of direction. And so I was like kind of looking behind me, and I caught this movement out of the corner of my eye, and he was coming right towards me, right down that hard line. And man, the wind was in my face all morning long. Never once did I drop milkweed and it was going the wrong direction. And so I get my bow, get my camera on him, turn on my 360 camera to make sure it's recording. And he is he's at 26 yards as well. And he stops right behind a tree that completely blocked his vitals. I probably could have just threaded a shot in there.
Right.
But after having missed that other buck, I was like, I want a perfect shot.
Yeah. And
so I'm like sitting there about to draw my bow, just waiting for him to take a couple more steps because I'd drill him at 25, broadside. And all of a sudden I feel cold wind on my neck, and
heart sunk.
And I was like, oh my God, he's not coming. And he just 180, got up on his hind legs and ran back.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes later, I had 2 does come right down the same trail. And they walked right in front of me, did exactly what he was going to do, and walked. They probably were 10 yards. So, anyway, I guess that all to say, no, I have not killed an Alabama buck this year.
So So two things. We'll start with the habitat first because the next one will derail us into more hunting topics. But I want people who are listening to this show, what you just heard is someone else validate something that I feel like I have been saying a lot. And I don't kill the biggest deer. I don't kill a ton of deer. A good year for me is 3, 4 deer, right? Like that's a great year for me, really. 1 to 2 deer is probably just a good year. But a lot of that has to do with it's kind of difficult to get on deer in this area. But you notice and pick up on very key patterns that you can utilize to your advantage to find and get on deer. And one of the things I'm always telling people, and I'm speaking directly to the Patreon group, and there's a few guys in there who are really getting their teeth wet when it comes to Florida feet wet. Yeah. Don't get well, they're probably getting their teeth wet too because they're South Florida guys. But I'm always telling them to find those hard transition lines, but also that 3-way junction. I have a guy from Southeast Georgia. He sent me a bunch of aerials. And he's like, what stands out to you on this map? And I took a screenshot and I circled like 3 or 4 areas. And I'm like, and I sent it to him and he said, why? And I said, there's 3 different types of habitat changes. If we know deer like a 2-way and you can find a 3-way, okay, let's change that up. If you know,
everybody likes a 2-way, so obviously a 3-way has got to be better, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean,
just
college,
common sense.
College, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, if y'all haven't already, you need to go to Parker's Instagram because that's going to be awesome. It'll still be up. I'm going to drop this tomorrow. But if you know a 3-way transition line or 2-way transition line is money, then a 3-way gives them ample opportunities, and you're going to have browse and security cover and thermals and all these different things that you just discussed. So if you listen to this episode and you were just kind of bebopping along listening to that and you weren't really breaking it apart, rewind it, take a moment, rewind it, and listen to what Parker just said, because I really feel like that is a money blueprint for all of Florida, because you're not going to have topography in Florida. It's not going to happen. You will have sloughs, you will have hardwoods, and you will have grassy areas. Maybe it's bushy areas. Think outside the box. Apply that when you look at a map. Try and find those 3-way transition lines and key in on them, because at a bare minimum, it's going to tell you what's in the area. The fact you found a scrape there, every time I'm in a swamp and I find it, or a pine flat, and I find a 3-way transition area, I find rubs, I find scrapes, and they are hit. I mean, obviously when they have velvet, they're not hitting it, but they seem to be getting hit all the time, and that's a social hub. It's huge.
Yeah, it's always been something for me that I have found a lot of value in, and there's a guy, I'm actually going to record a podcast with him this week. His name's Matt Powell, and he is him and another guy named Ben Harrison. They run the Bow Hunting League, which is a killer Facebook
Chase is
group.
in it right now.
Yeah. And, dude, it is such a, if you want to find the best deer killers in the country, that's the group to go to, because these guys kill big deer and they kill a lot of them. So Matt Powell, I did an episode with him about 2 years ago called X Marks the Spot, and he was basically just saying this exact same thing. He's killed 7 bucks this year. That's if he didn't kill one today. And he almost always kills one every day.
Seems highly illegal.
That's not in different states.
Oh,
yeah. He's gone all over and done it.
Yeah,
and he's just so consistent, man. And he's doing some of it on private, some of it on public. But he's he says, the thing that I figured out that gets me in bow range. He's done all this with a bow. The thing that I found out that gets me in bow range of these bucks is setting up where there's the most habitat change, the highest number of transitions. So yeah, a 2-way transition is great, and most of the time that's about what you got to work with. Especially like in Alabama, we have big hardwoods and clear cuts. But
Florida,
if you can
Georgia,
find,
I found that to be the case across the board.
If you can find in the South, typically what you're going to have, Florida maybe might be the exception to this, because I've seen more habitat change in Florida than just about anywhere else in the South. But like Alabama, you're going to have pines, you're going to have hardwoods, and you're going to have clear cuts. And that's going to be about what you get for the most part. Now, in swampy type areas, you'll have like this stuff that I was talking about, these thickets with hardwoods and maybe like a marshy type something or another.
I'll give people the blueprint. I guarantee you can find this habitat on every. I would be willing to bet cold hard cash, your entire life savings,
That's not much.
that you can find this 3-way from the jump, and then you can start finding more subtle ones, because there are real obvious transition lines, and then sometimes in a swamp there can be really subtle ones. But this one can be found in almost every South Georgia, Florida, and South Alabama, probably low country of South Carolina. Tall pines, Peter pines, and a SMZ.
Oh yeah.
You can find where there are grown pines and there are young pines coming up against each other, and where those two things come up against each other and there's a creek bottom with hardwoods. You can find that 3-way point, and every time you find it, you're going to find sign. May not be killer.
So, just went to this national forest that's close to your house.
Yep.
And I'm on Spartan Forge, just pulled up Spartan Forge. Have never looked at this place before. And from a very high view, I can see, especially you can see it on Spartan Forge as opposed to like Onyx, where everything's just a green blob.
Right.
On Spartan Forge, you can see, let's look.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And there's your 3-way transition.
Yep.
This stuff is not that complicated.
It's not. It's taking a lot and looking for what's selective in the monotonous.
If we were to go out here tomorrow, I would be looking for. There's another one right there.
Yep.
And it's subtle.
Yep.
But you can find these things. I mean, I'm guessing, is that like palmetto?
Yep, open palmetto
pines. That's probably a hardwood creek bottom.
It is indeed. Yep.
And then you have something else right there. So the other thing that plays into it is terrain. And in flatland like this, your terrain is going to mostly be like creeks.
Yeah, 100%.
Like that's going to be kind of take the place. It's going to substitute for terrain where I hunt in the mountains.
Yep.
Like we've got benches and drainages. Joey Bell calls them hollers.
Yep.
Straight got called out by Joey Bell this week.
That dude's savage.
Yeah.
He ate his Wheaties that morning. He brought his A game.
My
Good
gosh.
God.
He's like, what did he say? Podcasters, I see through you.
Yeah, that's what he said.
It's not called a drainage. It's called a holler. So you've got like benches, saddles, hollers.
Yep.
Like just stuff like that
Yep.
that can be used as if you find this 3-way transition and it happens to have these terrain features right in the middle of it. That's perfect.
Yep.
That's always the spots that I'm going to go and check out and try to hunt.
Yeah.
It limits you on what you feel confident in. I will say that.
Yeah.
Because it's a very, very rare occasion that I go and hunt open hardwoods. And without fail, every year I hear people like, I was just sitting out there in the open hardwoods or on a pine flat, and this big buck walked out. I'm like, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe it was luck. Maybe you knew like that's a good spot. Sometimes it works out. But for me, I am not. If somebody says like you got this place to hunt and it has just nothing but woods, like hardwoods, or just nothing but pines, like I'm like, I just don't feel confident in it.
It comes. I mean, I put 4 or 5 years hunting just darn near only pine flats in southeast Georgia, pine and palmetto flats. And there's subtleties to that. You'll have a gallberry bush flat that comes down, and there'll be a little, so where they drained, this is a prime example, where in the early 20th century they cut canals to drain things. Well, those canals weren't maintained. They all fell in, and if you push into the brush, all of a sudden, boom, it drops down a foot and a half, and if you get down and you see and you look at a deer's angle, there's a run that runs through the woods 300-400 yards before it turns. And if you look down, you got deer sign. Well, that's the path of least resistance that runs through there. And so you'll be running, and all of a sudden that'll dump into a pine flat where it opens up, and you'll have gallberry bushes on one side and tie-ties on the other side. Tie-ties might have been what that was, actually. We call them tie-ties. I don't know what their actual term is, but they're like this swampy bush, tallish tree.
I thought tie-ties and gallberries were the same thing.
I don't think so. Gallberries are relatively... I don't know, man. Maybe it is.
I thought you told me that. So if you didn't tell me that, then...
I don't know. It sounds like something Colin told you.
Well, so when I hunted Ocala National Forest... Is that what I hunted? Yeah, Ocala National Forest. I got on deer relatively quick by using this stuff, using the same.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was a type of bush, and it was either gallberries or ties or something.
Yep.
But it was thick, man. I mean, like you could not. I had a bear walking through it, and
you heard them long before you saw them, didn't you?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
dude. I mean, it was like stupid how loud it was. Deer. I heard deer walking through it, and I could always just say like, okay, there's a deer coming.
Yeah.
They just couldn't move through it quietly.
Yeah.
But they were on the edge of it, like on the edge of that and a palmetto flat. There's just beat up trail, dude. I think one day I saw 14 deer out there.
You did.
My first day hunting it, I saw 14 deer. The next day hunting it, I hunted just a little bit different spot. I saw like 7 deer, 2 bears, and a bunch of turkeys. Like it was just wildlife haven, right there because of all those hard line transitions that came together. Like, and I know people who if there's people out there, there's probably not a lot who listen to anything that anytime I'm a guest on a podcast. I talk about this because I think it's the most valuable thing that I know.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's the most consistent thing that I know. Like, this year has been a really hard year, not necessarily for sightings, but for my execution.
Right.
So I've put myself in the right position, but my execution's just been crap. It's been terrible.
I think it's also valuable because it works, but it's also valuable because I think it's something that's easily applicable for people. You cannot mistake a 3-way transition zone. It is what it is. Whether it's in person or whether it's on an aerial, when you look and the habitat looks different in 3 different in 3 different ways, that's a place to key on. And I think a lot of times you have these guys who are breaking down these huge tracts of land, and it's huge and it's overwhelming, or even it's a monotonous piece, a relatively monotonous piece of property that's smaller. It's like, what do I focus in on? Because maybe it's primarily pines. Well, if you go and it works. It just works everywhere you go, finding that 3-way.
Pines are maybe one of the hardest things because the canopy of pines block anything from an aerial map.
Yep. Especially if they're mismanaged, if they're not thinned and whatnot.
Yeah, you're not going to see what's actually underneath the canopy.
Yeah.
But, man, sometimes in pines you'll find, like, where they've maybe burned or cleared out, and then you'll find where they didn't. And it makes a hard line transition that you're going to have to see it in person to know that it's there, but they can be really good. And I find that I think it's a simple thing. Like, I always assume that pines are bedding because
more or less.
Pine straw is going to be the most comfortable thing that a deer could probably find in the woods.
And you tend to, if you have pine straw to be laying on, you tend to have good line of sight. And so you can put your back up against something. Here's the 3-way where I killed that doe in 2019 that came out. This is where I have all the big bucks on that national forest and that track. Hold on, let me swap because it's not in the fall mode. Spartan Forge is great because so you have the satellite during the summer, and then look at the difference right there, right? So this is a creek bottom. Right, this is a little bit of a transition between the creek bottom, but then when you zoom in, this is thinned out pines. It's just wide open. That's where I set up, and then these are pines with red oaks mixed in. And there was a trail, I kid you not, that comes right out of this corner, and that's where that doe came right out to me in the tree line. And they were bedded, and because there was this creek, you had about a 3-foot elevation change with cool air, so the thermals are pulling in. Everything you just said, everything we just said in one conversation. In a 30-minute conversation, that's why I killed that deer. And when I started going back and looking at why I killed it where I was, dude, it stood out like a sore thumb.
We actually look at it. It looks like you've got 4 different things. So you have the open right here. You have the pine.
A little thicker. Yep. The red oak.
With the red oaks. And then this, whatever that is.
It's a pine thicket.
So while it might be the same type of vegetation, it's thicker.
Denser.
Yeah, it creates a hard line.
Yep.
Man, I think, people, there's a lot of things that go into the way that I hunt. Pressure has you could find all this stuff, but if it's getting hunted every weekend, the deer probably aren't going to be there. Well, you may still see the sign from when they're not pressured or when they're moving through at night.
Right.
But I think pressure is like one of the largest contributing factors to being successful.
Absolutely.
But when you're talking about unpressured deer, I'm trying to transition us into
Yep.
what you want to talk about.
You take it.
When you're talking about unpressured deer, is when you can use these things. You know, I would if I were to go to, let's just say, what's a random Cahaba. Let's talk about Cahaba in Alabama. And I'm talking about Cahaba because I don't hunt Cahaba. So
Dave Owens does.
does he?
I think so.
I don't think he does.
Are you saying that because you don't want people to fly to Cahaba?
No, I really don't think he does.
I don't know.
It's
I
like-
thought he did.
It's like far away from where he lives.
I don't
so-
know anything, obviously.
So Cahaba's pretty popular because it's right close to Birmingham.
Yeah.
And so it's really not giving away any secrets.
Right.
You know. But I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh, if I were to go to Cahaba where they're see 100 yards away from a parking area, there's a saddle, a clear saddle on a ridge. Probably not going to ever hunt there because that is going to be the first thing that people see when they look at a map of that place. And if it's easy to get to, there's a good chance something like that. I wouldn't even consider that to be an overlooked spot because everybody has seen that on a map if it's there. I don't know if Cahaba has a saddle or not, but I'm just saying.
Somebody somewhere is going,
some of
curse
these,
you, Parker!
Yeah.
Probably Dave Owens.
There's overlooked spots that a lot of times won't have anything obvious on a map.
Yeah.
To make you, and then there's the things that are just obvious. Everybody knows that deer like to travel saddles.
Sure.
So you're gonna have a tree stand, probably a ladder stand set up right on that saddle somewhere.
Yep.
A lot of times these hard transition lines, it's not a secret that deer like edge.
Right.
And so when you find these lines, if you're in an easily accessible spot, or if you're on the edge of private land where they have easy access to it, you're gonna find that it's getting pressured. In fact, the biggest deer that I've killed in Alabama, I killed it early season, October the 23rd, I think, of 19. So I think it was 19, 2 years ago. And I killed him with my bow, and I've hunted that spot 3 times since then and not ever seen a single other deer.
Really?
But there's also a ladder stand set up right on that spot. Now, from the public aspect, nobody's getting to it unless they use a boat. From the private aspect, there's a road that goes right to it. You know what I mean? So if it's getting pressure, I was there at the beginning of the season, so typically in Alabama, bow season is pretty lightly pressured. Like you're not going to see a lot of the private lane guys out there. They're waiting until rifle season. That's the real opener. But there is a ladder stand sitting there. I've hunted it with a rifle 3 times since then, not seen a single deer. Hardly even any deer sign. And if you look at it on the map, dude, it looks perfect. It's a pine thicket with a clear cut and then hardwoods on the public side. And that's what that big buck was doing. He was coming out that transition line, and there's a ditch that basically, like just a small little indention in the terrain right there that deer was traveling. And he was going to go bed overlooking the water. But there wasn't deer there. There's not deer there anymore. I mean, there probably wasn't a whole lot of deer there that day whenever I went in there. It was just the right day, and he did exactly what I knew he was going to do, or what I thought that the deer might do because I had found bedding on these points before. And I just went in there and killed him. I was there on the right day. So that my point being, like, you want to find everything is so dependent on pressure. If you want deer to be doing, if you want to see deer do what deer do, you've got to get away from the pressure.
Right.
Then you'll see deer traveling these type of areas, you know.
Doing what they see on your show.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So let's transition into that because last week I wanted to get you on the podcast and I just lost track of time. The kid, it's a good excuse. I just beat that dead horse. You know, my kids keep me from doing anything fun.
I got issues.
It is kid, yeah.
Issues with the kid.
But you were like, yo, I'm coming through town. Do you want to do an in-person podcast? Which is always better, dude. This dynamic is just awesome because I can see you and pick up on your visual cues. But one of the things I've been trying to do is replicate a lot of your success, right? Like, and I don't mean that in like an overly flattering or demeaning way, the way that this season's going. But I mean that in all seriousness because you have found something a pattern and a process that works for you over and over and over and over again. Highly dependent on water, right? If there's not water there, your process changes. But I think you still pretty much apply the same principle. You're looking for certain habitat. But I started looking around me, and I've spent 5 years now breaking down Florida public land. And there are some benefits, and there is some great hunting, but there's a lot of frustrating areas around here to be hunted. And one of the things I looked at when I saw you getting success is you used water to not necessarily always get away from people, but access it in a way that other people don't, right? And so I bought a canoe this year. My wife bought me a canoe this year, I should say. It's a 15-foot fiberglass, flat-backed canoe. You got to see it today.
Yeah, it's longer than it looks in pictures.
That's what she said.
Girthier as well.
And you were impressed. It looks like you think it'll pass the sniff test when it comes to hauling a deer out. Yeah.
Well, for sure. I mean, I thought that beforehand.
Yeah.
But seeing it in person, like, really it is wider than
Right.
it looks like in the pictures.
Yeah. I think it's 43 inches wide.
I think the only issue that I have with hunting with a kayak, I have a little motor that I put on mine. Yeah. It's a 2.5 horsepower Yamaha. And, dude, in the daylight, I'll run that thing, and it gets me where I need to go quick. It's the mornings, like, running in the mornings, like, I've hit stumps in it. And my kayak's not going to flip. But I could lose my balance. You know what I mean? Like, you hit a stump hard enough going 10 miles an hour. And, like, I had one time I was down on a WMA in South Alabama, and I hit a cypress stump. So you know how they look like little horns coming out of the water? And I popped that thing, and it turned my whole boat sideways. So this is a testament to NuCanoe. It didn't flip it.
Really?
No, it wasn't even really close to flipping it, but it turned me sideways, and my paddle, like, fell out, and I had to go turn around and go get my paddle floating in the water. That make your butthole wink.
Sure.
You know, going 10 miles an hour in the dark. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do to make myself a little more efficient, especially on I killed a deer last year that was 5 miles away from the boat ramp.
Sweet.
And that was using my kayak, but it took me I was up at like 1 o'clock in the morning that day. Because I knew
you had to take your time.
I had to take my time getting there. I mean, 5 miles is a long ways to go in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're not going 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get there, 30 minutes if you can go full bore. But it took me every bit of an hour and a half, hour 45 to get back there. So that means if it gets daylight right now at 6 o'clock, is when, I mean, it's probably shooting light at 6 o'clock right now.
So, yeah.
Maybe not here.
It's like right at 7, so it's about 6 for you.
Yeah, so it'd be 6 for me.
Yeah, because you're right on that cusp of the eastern and central.
Yep. So it's getting daylight. Man, I'm so jealous of you. You get an extra hour? Jeez. If you're getting there at 6 o'clock, that means, or if you're trying to be set up at 6 o'clock, that means that you need to be in your tree, be at the base of your tree by 5:30 or so.
Yep.
And that's really still pushing it.
I was about to say, I like to be set up an hour before shooting light.
Right. Yeah, that's getting set up at light. So if you want to get there, let's just say you want to get there 30 minutes before shooting light and be set up, ready to go. That means you need to get there at 5:30.
Yep.
You need to be in your tree at 5:30, ready to go. So you need to be at the base of your tree at like 5:15, which means if it takes you an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, you're in the boat at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Like, that's
dedication. That's great.
Tough.
Yeah.
If you have a boat, though, that goes
23 miles an hour.
23 miles an hour.
No, I'm not going to run that at night. I can tell you that much.
But if you could.
Yeah, I'll probably run 5 to 10. I mean, we got some really stumpy lakes and rivers around here. I'm going to really take my time. But you're still moving. Your margin for error is drastically larger.
Exactly. Yeah. And the kayak is sexy. It gets those clicks. It looks cool whenever. But man. It makes my decisions a lot of times on where I want to go.
Sure.
Because I'm like, I don't want to deal with that this morning. And it really has nothing. It's not a knock on like NuCanoe or kayak hunting in general. But when I'm trying to be efficient, that's not always the best way. There are ways that a kayak is more efficient. It's more versatile than, because I can go 5 or 6 miles in my kayak. I can also go down a tiny little creek, So it's definitely got versatility, but sometimes it's not the most efficient way to do it. So that's one of the things that I was really impressed by your canoe, because it definitely looks like it would add that little bit of stability, or maybe confidence
from the stability. I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, I don't have any qualms about taking that boat out. First off, from a gator standpoint, right? Like, my kayak is at least as long as the longest gator on the lake, right? So there's that. There's also, like, I showed you out there, the canoe actually sits about where it did on the trailer, where it did me when I was waiting in the marsh, and I was able to just throw my leg up into the canoe and step up into the canoe, and it didn't tilt, it didn't lean. I mean, it moved a little bit because that's what a boat does, but I stand up in the seat and push pull. I mean, that's how I got through the marsh. Once I got to where the trolling motor couldn't take me any further, I fold the seat over, I stand up on top of the seat with my paddle. I'll have a push pull soon, and I just push my way through. You can only get so high off of a kayak before you do start to jeopardize some of that stability. You could put, I think, so it's got I think close to 1,000-pound capacity in that thing. So
you probably got
75. Yeah, probably.
Because my new canoe has like 650.
Right. So I got an 80-pound motor on the back. I got a 3-gallon gas tank. I've got me at 200 pounds. Okay, 220.
Okay.
and a 25-pound sack. I mean, I've got room for 2,
you have
3.
A 22-pound sack?
With camera gear, platform. I don't have your fancy stick.
Never mind. It went over your head, Walt.
Zing.
It's a big old sack.
That's a big old sack, man. I have to special order my pants.
I'm 220. I'm really 200. I just got a 22-pound sack.
All right, let's rein this in. So let's talk about water access, because one of the things you do is you backdoor public land. I did that one on purpose. You backdoor a lot of access on water. What decisions go into, not necessarily how you travel, because navigation is something you can learn any number of ways, and that's not really interesting to people. When you're deciding where you're going to go on whatever lake or body of water it is that you are, what are you looking for when you're headed that direction that stands out to you?
Man, I'll tell you what. In Alabama, some of my favorite property to hunt is TVA land. So it's Tennessee Valley Authority. And it's not a secret to anybody. It's just really nasty most of the time. Like, it's hard to get to.
Yep.
But Corps of Engineers land, every state pretty much has some type of Corps of Engineers land.
Except Florida and Georgia, unfortunately.
Georgia doesn't?
None.
Are you sure?
Positive.
I think Georgia does.
I don't think so. I think
anyway.
Keep going.
Like, Missouri has Corps of Engineers land.
Corps land. I'm just sticking around.
Okay. Well, I think Georgia does.
100%. Yeah.
Tennessee does.
Yep. Most of the Southeast has got Corps land, because we built all the lakes during the Great Rebuild.
And that's the thing, is it's always around water, and it's just undeveloped property is all it is. And so usually it's nasty. They don't manage it. They don't burn it or anything. It's just undeveloped land that you can hunt. It's public land, and then usually it's on water. And the thing I usually like a lot about it is that it is completely inaccessible by walking.
Can we pause for a second? Because one of the things that you said, I think, is striking. It's not managed. And when a lot of people think public land, I think they key in on, like, this W makes 4 on one side. They plant food plots. You can't shoot anything unless you shot a doe first. It's a quota hunt only. And they hone in on that. Maybe that's a good reason to do that. I'm not saying it's not. You're saying, I like this really undesirable track solely because it's hard to get to by other people.
Yeah, because like I said, pressure is the most important thing.
Right.
The other thing is, like, I don't know if any of your listeners have ever hunted Tennessee, or a lot of them probably live in Tennessee. Tennessee does. I'm not trying to knock the TWRA, but they kind of do a crap job of management on their properties. Like it's all like crap woods, hard to walk through. Like I've heard turkey hunted Tennessee, and I don't know how I've ever killed a turkey out there because you take a step and you're breaking branches because it's just crap woods. But it offers a lot for whitetails. Like as long as they've got food. The other thing that Tennessee does well is they have crops on a lot of their public land, and so the deer have food. They have habitat to stay for security, and there's a lot of freaking deer in Tennessee. I think I've been on your podcast before, and I said that I believe Tennessee is one of the greatest states for Southern sportsmen because I mean they have tons of turkeys, they got tons of deer. It's a great place to live and a great place to hunt, but they don't do almost any management. It seems like on their property as far as like burning and cutting and all
Timber
that stuff.
harvest,
Yeah,
any of that. Yeah.
I don't really think they do a whole lot of that, and I believe it was Adam Cruz that told me that they don't do a whole lot on their WMAs. There's not a lot of management that goes into it, but a lot of this Corps of Engineers type property in any state that I've been to and hunted it. So I've hunted it in Missouri, I've hunted it in Alabama, and I've hunted it maybe in Tennessee. I have hunted it in Tennessee, and it's all kind of the same. It all looks the same, just crap woods, and a lot of times it's very, very hard to get to, and there's not a lot of it, so it'll just kind of run the edges of a body of water. So it's not like you have like big, huge 500-acre chunks of it. It's going to be like little tiny slivers here and there. And so I really like those type of places as far as pressure goes, because a lot of people are going to look at a map and say that's not a whole lot of room to roam. It's not a whole lot of room to look. But if you can find a lot of the thing, and a lot of these deer, man, they've just learned to adapt and lived in those kind of places. And so it's that's some of my favorite stuff to hunt. But really, any water access place usually has some area, like any WMA or national forest or public land piece of property has some part of it that is inaccessible by foot or very difficult to access by foot
or counterproductive.
Yes.
Sometimes where you want to hunt is down by the water, but you've got to walk through all of the land to get down there.
Yep. And when you go from Kentucky is a good example. So there's a spot that I hunt in Kentucky. This whole place, man, you can pretty much walk anywhere you want to, except this tiny little piece, like very little spot, like maybe a couple 100 acres or less, that is hard to get to. And I killed a really good buck in there last year. This year, I killed a buck, but I didn't find him. I put a really good shot on him. Yep. I know he probably died. A buddy of mine went in. He got drawn to hunt it with a muzzleloader, and he killed a solid freaking buck in there. And saw we both have seen big deer in this area just about every time I've sat there, dude. Like, it's been very rare that I didn't see a buck in this area. And it's because it's the only spot on this whole piece of public land that you just... So I'll tell you, we went in to track a buck, the buck that I didn't recover. We walked in because that was the only way I could get people back there is by walking in. And it was a long dang ways. Like, I could not imagine trying to walk out there early in the morning to hunt it. Just inaccessible pretty much.
Yeah.
There is probably people who walk in every once in a while, but it's way less than anywhere else. And so that's always been the kind of spots that stick out the most to me, man. I always, my scouting that I do it's not like it's not the way other people scout. My scouting is, I'm going to find a piece of land. I'm going to try to drive to it. And if I can't drive to it, then I'm probably going to hunt there. I'm probably going to throw a hunt at it if it offers all the things that I mentioned prior, like the habitat, the nice transitions, and all that stuff. But the way I scout it is usually I'm going to drive to it, try to drive to it. If I can't drive to it, then that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
That means I'm probably going to throw a sit at it. And if I happen to just go in there like during turkey season or something, I do a lot of my scouting during turkey season. If the terrain lays out well and the vegetation looks like I thought it would,
Mm-hmm.
I'll throw a sit at it. That's how, I mean, just about everywhere that I've ever hunted, that's exactly how I found it.
So I think one of the things that I've glossed over in this process is, of all the people who I would bet money are going to kill deer, you rank among the Andy Mays, the Jake Bushes, in the sense that I expect you, not like, I expect you, but more like it's like in any time I see a text message from you, when I go to pull it up, it's like he's probably killed something, right? Like that's just what I expect.
Not quite the caliber of the Andy May. And
Is there a cat right there?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At
first I thought it was a ghost.
I did too. Yeah, it was the ghost of buck shot at past. But I expect you to kill deer, and in the sense that they kill deer, right? But you don't effing scout, bro. You don't scout. Not before the season, not after the season. You are the epitome of, and I say this, you get to hunt 7 days a week now, but this applies to the weekend warrior, which is 99.99999%. In fact, if you're listening to this podcast, you almost have to be by default a weekend warrior, just because realistically speaking, the guys who hunt 7 days a week, they aren't listening to podcasts about hunting.
For sure.
But you find a spot on the map using this template that you found success. You go, you hunt, maybe you get down and scout while you're there. But that's like all that you do.
Everything is in-season scouting
yeah.
for me.
Which blows my mind.
Turkey season scouting. Right. I find most of my spots by turkey hunting, and turkey hunting will take you all over creation if you let it.
Right.
You'll walk a lot of places.
Yep. With no leaves on the trees and fresh sign.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, I mean, you'll see You'll see exactly how something lays out, how it turkey season is, to me, the best time, because in Alabama, turkey season starts like 3 weeks after deer season's over.
Right.
So,
same here.
So it's like, I mean, you're pretty much seeing a lot of the fresh sign and stuff like that. So, but then, I mean, let's see. I've killed one of my biggest bucks, public land deer, on a first time sit, first time ever stepping foot on that area. Another one of my good bucks I killed the second time I hunted an area, like or went into it, stepped foot on it. Like, most of it has to do with these common denominator factors, that I've talked about before. And I mean, in big woods, let's just be real. In the big woods type areas, mountainous type stuff, hilly stuff, a lot of it's going to be monotonous. Woods, big woods. That's the best way I can describe it. The deer have so many places that they can be at any point in time. Like one bedding, just because you find a big buck bed on a point, he's got another one 300 yards away.
On the next point.
On the next one, yeah. He's not going to be doing the same thing every single day over and over and over again. He's just going to kind of, they're nomadic, really. Yeah. And you're going to find your best sign, your best scouting is your most recent sign. It's got to be. And if I'm going in July or June, they're not going to be where I'm hunting them at. Because as soon as those acorns start dropping, which in Alabama, the acorns are already dropping when the season opens. So we can't hunt in September. Our season opens at the earliest October 1st. You've already got acorns on the ground, and everything has already shifted. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you could do all the scouting you want, but it's not going to be scouting for fresh sign. You're not going to find that, Now, what you might find, if I just decide I want to go scouting in July, which usually I don't because it's too hot, I don't want to. It's just a waste of time. Fishing. Yeah, I'll go bass fishing. I'll be actually spending time with my family and working.
Family season. Yep.
That would be more beneficial to me. But if I do, like when I first started doing the kayak access stuff, I did a lot of scouting preseason just because I wanted to be set up for the season, and which ended up being a good idea. But I was just going to the beaches because during the summer it's hot. This is just logic, right? It's hot. Deer are going to be around water.
Yep.
If a beach doesn't have deer tracks on it, then flip that spot. I'm not going to be there.
Right.
But if it has deer tracks on it, then I know, okay, there's deer in the area. October comes around, I'll go in there and I'll find the things that make sense for them to be at. Hot feed trees, hard transition lines, just things like that. So, yeah, I don't do any. Like, I really don't do. Like, people say, like, scouting is where you kill a deer. And
I feel like
I
there's
get
more
it
than
in
one,
some places.
There's more than one way to skin a cat. I mean, you got to remember, you also have the privilege of hunting as often as you do.
Sure. Now, I didn't then.
You've always hunted more than the average person.
Maybe it's just not because of my schedule. Maybe it's just my priority.
Maybe. Might be. But you do, I feel like, consistently, in the past few years, you've gotten out more than most people. More than the weekend warrior.
More than Friday and Saturday,
right.
Yes.
And
or Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
Now, I will say, I have been a lot of people have this perception, too, because as a pastor, which I was, I don't get to hunt on Sundays. So I'm never hunting. I never hunted Sundays. Like this year was like the first time I've hunted like 3 Sundays this year. It's been amazing. I hunted yesterday, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But Fridays were always my day off.
Right.
When I was in ministry. So I would be hunting on Fridays, which most people are working on Fridays. And if I post an Instagram story or a picture, people are like, what do? You get to hunt in the middle of the week. And then I would hunt some mornings, before I had meetings or whatever. I do a lot of like quick sits from, till 8 or 9 o'clock, and then I'd go to work.
Right.
But it wasn't like super valuable type hunting. And I understand what you're saying. Like I put a lot of priority in being able to go, and so like I've set up my life in such a way,
absolutely.
And my wife knows the expectation. You know,
Yep.
she's amazing,
Yep.
and she knows that it means. And honestly, at this point, with doing Southern Ground, it has become a part-time job. So there are like
benefits to you going more.
Finances that happen from me going more. You know, and so that's a cool thing. It's also not a cool thing in a lot of ways. Is like you feel like you've got a lot of pressure.
Absolutely.
Based around your success, and so yeah. I mean, I'm not.
I wasn't trying to make it to where you paint this rosy picture. What I was trying to get at, though, is for the guy who only has, let's say he's not the weekend warrior. Maybe he's just got Saturday. Sunday's church and family and doing stuff. He's just got Saturday. Well, if you have a 3-month-long season and 4 weekends out of that, you're looking at 12 hunting days, right? I see a lot of benefit in him saying, okay, the 3 months after the season, before there's leaves on the trees, I'm going to get in those areas and see what the sign is. There's a place for that. But I think the real benefit that should be pulled from what you're talking about is for the guy who's in his season right now. Maybe he's not seeing the success he wants. Maybe he wants more success. Maybe he's just a little restless. Is change it up and go scout. In-season scouting is a very important tool. Everybody's always trying to find this recipe. What's the recipe for success? I think it's a matrix. I think it's this thing of like all these different opportunities that you're given and make the most of those opportunities. And you're always bouncing around. And that leads me to my next question. How do you assess if you've been in an area too long? How long you go in there, you have this encounter, do you go back? How do you know when to go back, and when is it like, I'm going to let that area sit and I'm going to go hit this other spot tomorrow? Tough question.
So there's a couple different scenarios that I can think of that have been recent where I had this thought. One of them was this weekend. I went in, hunted a spot the first day on this special opportunity hunt. Hunted a spot on the first evening, saw 2 does, left my stuff in the tree, came back, shot that doe, missed that buck, and saw like 12 deer that morning. Like, it was a really solid deer morning. The next day, I didn't hunt that evening because I was skinning that deer out, and it gets dark at like 3 o'clock now. So I didn't hunt that evening. Next day, I went back in and did not see a single deer. And it just felt empty. And I was like, nope, no more. Not coming back to this spot. Whether or not it was the right move or not, that's if I go in and I don't see a deer, like I'm going to move on. Now then you have people like Michael Perry, who a lot of people know about, just killed the state record muzzleloader buck in
Freaking
195-inch
toad.
deer.
Yeah.
He's a great deer hunter,
Yep.
super good dude.
Yep.
He says a lot of times you just need to sit there and sit there and sit there, and eventually he's going to show up. You put all your time into one spot, and eventually, if it's a good spot, he's going to show up. Bobby Worthington preaches that same thing. Like, you spend every day, if you got one buck tag and you feel like this is a spot where he's at and you've got him pinpointed, you spend every day in that one spot, and eventually he's going to come by. I can't do that. If I don't see deer,
I think the caveat to that logic is we're talking about two older gentlemen who have been doing this for a long time, and they know what that spot looks like. They know. There's a blueprint in their mind of they know what that good spot looks like. I'm not that guy.
So you ain't that guy.
I ain't that guy.
I think everything is also dependent on your method. So, if you're bow hunting, you you have people like the Hunting Public and Whitetail Adrenaline, like these guys who move around a lot with a bow, like they're hunting from the ground. They're also hunting deer-rich states.
Yeah.
And so their opportunities,
Higher.
they blow a lot of opportunities, but there can always be a chance, you know. In Alabama, that's just...
Especially where Michael Perry's hunting.
Yeah, in those type places. Florida, low deer density, like, you really need to be... I feel like with a bow, your best chance is to be in one location, not moving around just too terribly much. And I don't mean not hunting from the ground. I definitely think, but I think you need to be in like a stationary position, like spot and stalk it, and always the best way to do it.
No,
with a bow, with a rifle, which is probably what 90% of the people listening to this. Yep. Even if they don't want to admit it, they're taking the rifle out and they're shooting deer with it. That's how most people hunt. I mean, and that's totally fine. Yeah. If I'll tell you this, I'm probably not going to pick up my bow for the rest of the season. I'm going to rifle hunt because
or muzzleloader if those two are options. Shotgun maybe. Yep.
I'll take the shotgun on the Patreon hunt.
Yep.
Like that's going to be what I do. I've shot 6 deer and I've shot about 65 arrows. It seems like this year, and
that big buck you shot at would have been dead with a rifle, guaranteed.
Oh yeah, every buck I've seen, every big buck that I've seen, if I was rifle hunting, I would have killed it. Which a lot of people think like, oh, well, that's just part of it. That's bow hunting. That's the thing. That's great equalizer. Like, okay.
Do you?
Yeah, if that's how you feel about it. Like,
next.
I kind of like, standing over dead deer.
Me too.
But so with rifle, I found a lot of spots by late season rifle hunting. Just getting out there and walking around. If I got a tag in my pocket, or if it's doe days or something like that, I'll take the rifle out and
we're gonna pause this for a good night kiss. So you said this podcast was briefly interrupted with a good night snuggle. Anyways, so we're back from a brief baby break, and I think you were trying to say something along the lines of if you had a tag in your pocket, you're slip hunting.
Yeah, I mean that's totally effective with a rifle. Even if you bump a deer and he runs out, most of the time deer are going to run out to 50 yards. They might run 50 yards and then stop and then look. So walk with the wind in your face as long as they don't smell you. Yeah. If you just bump them, shoot. That's an effective way to hunt and scout. And you get a lot of that fresh. Yeah. Like I would tell anybody who maybe just has, if I had one day to hunt, to rifle hunt a big woods piece of land in Pennsylvania. So high hunting pressure, pretty decent rifle hunting population, but some good deer and a lot of deer. There's a lot of deer in there. If I had one day to go out and hunt Pennsylvania, I promise you I would not be setting up in a saddle. I would be walking.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm totally with you on that.
So if I have not very many days, I'm going to cover ground, and I'm going to make the most because, I've heard Zach Farrenball say it before because that's he likes to hunt that way. He likes to move around a lot, but it's just the most valuable use of your time. Now, if you know this is a good spot, the deer are going to come through here for sure. Well, then that's when you set up, and most of the time that's what I'm doing. I'm setting up because I want to get stuff on film. Even if I don't sometimes feel like the best chance of me killing a deer is to be set up, I'll still do it because I want to get the film is like the trophy to me now.
Yeah, it's getting to that way for me too.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. So I think also maybe one of the subtleties of your style of hunting is whenever you water access areas, you tend to know who's in that area also water accessing it because you see boats. But you're also accessing a piece of property in a way that gives you the freedom and the peace of mind to move around. Number one thing I hear from people all the time, the same dude I was telling you about earlier who was sending me all the messages and saying, hey, what do you think about all this? I keep telling him move around, move around, move around. And I think there's genuinely a worry and a concern about bumping into other people. Well, if you're water accessing, let's say it's a 100-acre square, and that's what these things are, these little 100-acre squares, and you pull your boat up on that slip, chances are you're the only person there if you don't see another boat.
And chances are a lot of the time that I'm the only person that's been there since the last person, or since the last time I was there.
Right.
Which is cool.
Absolutely.
I can treat a lot of these properties like I have one buck that I've been trying to kill this year, and I have come very close to him twice. I've bumped him out of his bed 2 different times. But I know I'm the only person bumping him out of his bed. There's nobody else going in there bumping him out of his bed. I've hunted this place for 3 years, never seen a soul. It's a good spot. It's a really good spot. There's a ton of deer in there. And I've bumped him 2 different times, found his sign, hunted him, didn't see him, but I've bumped him twice. And so I can give that, if I bump him, I bumped him the second time I bumped him. I went in the next day to try to kill him because I was going to Kentucky, and I knew I was the only person that was hunting that area, and I was like, I'm going to go in there and try to kill him before I leave because I know nobody else is going to be in here after him. He's still in the safest spot within a 10-mile radius probably. He's still going to be safer in here than anywhere else, and he knows that. So I tried to hunt him again, didn't see him, and then the spot rested it's still resting,
Right.
I went in there, I hunted just the very edge of the perimeter of where he goes, and I hunted it last week, I guess. Yeah, it would have been last week, one time, and didn't see a deer. So I wasn't deep enough into the heart of the property, but I just wanted to throw a rifle sit at it. That was the first day I went out with a rifle. But since then, nobody's hunted it, so he's still safe. And when I get back from Florida, it's the rut. So I'm gonna go in there, and I'm not gonna call my shot because that doesn't work for me like it works for some people. That jinxes me. But I think I have a very good chance, high chance of being able to kill that deer because there's 1.5 million does running all over that place, and
he's going to be checking them. Yep. And the way that you position yourself with the wind on the top of the crest, I mean, it's a beautiful strategy. I think.
And he's going to be, if he's not with a doe, if he's not chasing a doe, he's going to be going around the perimeter of where all these does bed, which is one big giant thicket that I know well. If I have got one, so this is kind of not really tactical at all, but where I think I'll kill him at is one spot right in the middle of this big. So when I say a thicket, I mean probably let's say it's 40 acres of like clear-cut grass, like tall grass, briars. It's just thick. It's nasty. And like some scattered little tiny pines in there. And there's one big tall pine right on the edge of it, and it goes straight up, and I can get in that as high as I can possibly get. I can look down. It's the only spot you can get into in there where you can look down into the thicket. And I think I'm going to kill him right there because I think I'm going to catch him running does all through that thicket because that's exactly what they do.
Well, if
I don't kill him, I think I'll kill a buck there the first time I sit there.
Yeah. I think it's...
let me rephrase that. I think I'll shoot at a buck the first time I sit there.
I think it's one of those things where you've taken something that is highly undesirable to the masses and found that it's quite desirable to the hunter.
This is unfortunate. Yes.
right?
Yeah. It
Like
is.
like it's undesirable because you have to kayak there. If you can't kayak there, you have to have a boat. If you have to have a boat, you got to put the boat in the water. You got to deal with the freezing water. You got to deal with navigating at night. Relatively small inconveniences if you really think about it. Like it's not like you have to do what Dan Infalt does, where he's wading through muck for a mile, frozen muck. I mean, you get in your boat, you put your layers on. You get to where you're getting to. You hike up a 200-foot elevation change, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Steep.
Right?
Just about anywhere
But
where I
what?
hunt.
300 yards
Yeah.
max.
Yeah.
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 So we're not talking like elk hunting. We're not talking about anything. And I'm not saying that to demean, but it's like you found these barriers to entry that keep a lot of people out. And then you've also gone and said, okay, this highly unmanaged piece of property actually provides security cover for all the animals that are getting pushed off of the private. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, there's a lot of deer hunters in Alabama, right? That private's getting hunted.
And the private offers all the other benefits that where they're roaming around at night.
Yep.
A lot of the private land borders that I hunt, they've got green fields and feeders and all kinds of stuff up. And those deer, they're coming in there at night.
Yeah. You ask any of those guys on trail camera, they probably got all the bucks you're talking about at like midnight to 2 a.m. hitting their feeders.
And a lot of these places, they're like deer in the rut, they're killing them and they're seeing them, and because the deer are running around stupid, they're full range. If you go and look at Spartan Forge at any given time, deer in the rut, they're going to be full range, which means they're going to be where they're at night in the daytime.
Yep.
And so they're killing bucks too, but they're also having to deal with pressure. There was a guy hunting that grain field 2 nights ago. There hadn't been a guy hunting the nasty thicket that I'm hunting.
Right. Except for that one guy that's chasing your kayak all over.
That's what I was. There are people. Unfortunately, there are people, and probably even some Chasing Tales listeners, who are like this. Definitely Ron. Ron is definitely that guy. No, I will say I think Ron is like the epitome of some of my favorite people.
Yeah.
In deer hunting.
Yeah.
Because he really wants to work hard.
Yes, he does.
He
doesn't want anything handed to him.
He doesn't want it handed to him. I like that. Shout out to you, Ron. A lot of respect from me. And he also he shot a doe the other day, and he was so fired up about it, and I loved it. I loved every second of that, because that's what it's all about. Anyway, so there are people out there who watch YouTube videos, and they try to landmark spots.
Yeah.
And they will literally go in and find these spots and put cell cameras on every single spot, and then they'll brag to their friends about, hey, you want to go hunting with us this weekend? We're going to go hunt Parker spots. That literally happened. And unfortunately for them, that friend also knows me and was like, hey, bro,
Billy's going to be hunting your spot tomorrow morning. These guys know your spot.
So here's the best part. Here's the best part about it, and I doubt he listens to this podcast. I don't mean that in any demeaning way towards you, but this guy he'd come to some of the teach and trains that I've done, and was a super cool guy. I would have helped him out with anything. Had the audacity a few weeks ago to message me and be like, hey, how would you access this piece of property? Completely different piece of property. And I was like, nah, man, I ain't answering this message. And because I knew it was him. Yeah. And then he, in my first video that I did this season, I talked about I'm having to kind of branch out a little bit and do some new spots. Yeah. Because I got people following around on the videos. And as soon as that video dropped, he blocked me on Facebook. And I was like, you just gave it away. I know it's you. Yeah.
Yeah. I was speculating before.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I wasn't. I knew it was him. But
I got you.
But it was like, you just
gave it all away.
Gave it all away. You had no reason to block me on Facebook unless you're guilty. Yeah. So anyway, a lot of these spots are inaccessible, but I have really challenged myself this year, and probably the reason why I haven't killed a buck in Alabama is probably a lot due to this, is that I'm branching out and going new places. You should. And they're not always productive. Yeah. Some of them are great, and I'll be back there during the rut, but man, some of them are tough to get to. Like there was one spot where there's a boat ramp that's hardly a boat ramp. I think I sent you a picture of it. It's like a steep, like a straight wall.
Yeah.
So when you drag your kayak to it early in the morning in the dark, your kayak goes nose down into the water because it just drops off. And so I actually had to pull my kayak up by getting my strap, like my ratchet strap, and putting it on my what's it called, my trailer hitch.
Gotcha.
And drive my kayak up.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't pull it up.
Yeah.
So a lot of these spots are like that are like it's an even, like it's not just small inconveniences. Right. You talked about the inconveniences though. There are a lot of small ones that you have to deal with. I don't know if you're like me. It's hard for me to at 3 o'clock in the morning wake up to go pee.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I don't want to get up. Mm-hmm. Now, and that's a stupid thing to not want to do. But now imagine you got to wake up at 3 a.m. and go put a boat in the water in the cold.
Yep.
They're minor, but in the morning
up,
and in the dark, it's a mental thing, right? So, and the older I get, I'm serious. The older I get, like the less sleep that I get, right? So everything's dependent on children and kids. Yep. Like you can't go to bed at 8 o'clock.
Nope. And get up at 2 like it was normal.
At 2, yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I think we need to move you into first an incognito boat. We need to get you into like the most basic of all John boats. That way your rig, it doesn't stand out. But also, I think you've earned the right to have a boat now. You've done it the hard way. And it's like as your life gets busier, having the boat is going to give you that peace of mind. And also it's going to retain opportunities for you, because one of the things that you said last year, man, like a dozen times, was it was entirely too windy and choppy out there to have a kayak, or it was windy enough that myself and everything in the kayak was getting wet and then freezing. And it's like, dude,
I ruined a camera that way,
right?
Because it was so choppy and so much water came into the boat.
Yeah.
And it got my backpack wet. Yep. And it was the one day that I didn't put my camera in a dry pack.
Yeah. And so it's one of those situations where if you give yourself those gunnels and that extra security, even if you have to take it slow because it's bad conditions, you can still be out there in worse conditions than you could with the kayak.
Man, I've thought about all this stuff, and I like the kayak thing. I really do. I think it's
probably still a place for it.
There is nothing more fun than putting a big buck in a kayak and just like taking your time and floating back to the ramp. Like that is so much fun. It's so much fun, dude. But if that hinders my opportunity to get those big bucks, then it really doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so this year I have definitely challenged myself. I started New Spot Monday for early season. And I would just go into a brand new spot that maybe I've had marked on a map and never been there because I didn't need to. Well, now I need to. You know, I need to go in there. Jared Schaefer just shot
a freaking hammer. Did you see it?
No,
dude.
It's
a freaking hammer.
What in the world? Good Lord, he's the guy that when he texts you. Yeah, he just. That is crazy. He's
live
the guy
on the podcast. Jared Schaefer just shot a freaking hammer in West Virginia.
That's a West Virginia deer.
Yeah. He's tagged out in what, 4 states now?
He's insane. Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia. He shot another one.
Nodak? Didn't he shoot that buck in Nodak?
No, he didn't shoot one.
Oh, I got you.
Dang. Anyway, you should get Jared on. Jared can talk about this stuff better than me. If somebody wants to know how to shoot a doe, somebody wants to learn how to shoot a doe, I'm your guy. If you want to learn how to shoot hammer bucks, Jared is probably he is proving himself to be among the best.
But you were saying as you get older,
man, it's harder. It gets harder and harder to do this style of hunting every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like, if it was just Fridays and Saturdays, I'd be
Right.
fine. I'd make it work. But when you're doing it every single morning, it really starts to just wear you down to the core.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at right now. I'm actually pretty excited about this little trip to Florida to
break. Yeah.
Like, I never thought I'd be like, I'm excited to work all week. Man, that's just going to be great. It's going to be nice relaxation to just be able to work.
Yeah.
But, you've told me this, and a bunch of other people have told me this, that the process, and I know this about deer hunting, is the process is the funnest part of it. It really is. When, like where I hunt turkeys is a good example, because you're going to go out, you can go out every day of the season, and you might hear gobbling on like 2 days of the season. Because it's such bad turkey hunting.
Yeah, it really is. It's surprising.
Like, it's just, everything's there. I mean, the turkeys are there. You see them during deer season. They're all over the place. But during turkey season, man, they're the OGs, and they do not want to gobble. But when you go out, every single day you might not hear a gobble, but when you do, and then you go in and you kill him, it makes that turkey, it makes that gobbler so much more valuable, and it makes that hunt so much more fun than if you went out and you had opportunity every single day. So while my season this year is slower, whenever it does all come together and I make it happen and stars align or whatever, the process makes that feeling of success. Just,
you have to stay in love with the process.
you got to. And
I'm writing a piece about this for the website, because when I water access for the first time with the canoe, and I'm pulling out, right? And I'm not going to give all the details away, but I'm pulling out, and here I am doing something that I've set out to since the beginning of the summer to do. I've got a cold front. I'm pulling out of a marsh. I'm accessing a piece of property I've never been able to access before, utilizing the tactics that I've always wanted to do. If I was upset with the fact that I hadn't pulled the trigger and I got frustrated over that, I've fallen out of love with deer hunting, because I've condensed down, I've distilled down the only satisfaction that I can come from that hunt is some perceived end result. And in reality, I'm never going to worry about the fact that I did kill a deer on that island for 10 times. What I won't forget is pulling out of that marsh with the moonlight, turning off my headlamp and feeling that cold front dip down and having that entire lake to myself, and hearing the deer blow on the island as I left, and all that different stuff. Like, that was an adventure, dude. It was an adventure, and that's what we're seeking. It's always great to kill a big deer. I'm not saying that to diminish that. That's also a part of the adventure, right? But you got to stay in love with the process. I'm not speaking to you directly when I say that, but to anybody listening to this, the process is the memory.
Being, like, guys like what Jared Schaefer's experiencing this year, like, you could talk to him, and it's not every single year that he has the season that he had this year, but that is a really fun part of the process.
Absolutely,
is consistency, and I had that season last year. I felt like last year, every time I walked into the woods, the buck that I wanted to kill walked out.
Me too.
It was just like, like, that's fun, and it makes the other seasons, when you actually have to
earn it. Yeah.
And it's not, Jared earned it.
Sure.
And I earned it last year.
But there's different degrees of effort, right? There's different degrees of effort applied.
Yeah, and so when you learn that the process is the part of it that makes it so cool and so desirable, man, it'll change. I feel like I changed that in my mind yesterday, actually, sitting in the woods yesterday. After that buck winded me and I was about to get a shot at him, and I was just like, man, this sucks. Like, I was literally sitting in the tree like, why am I putting myself through this? Like, I am miserable. There was a guy on Facebook, actually, something good that happened out of Facebook. On one of my posts, he said, his name's Jeremy Rieger, or Rager, I don't know how you pronounce it, but
I know who you're talking about.
He commented on a post of mine, and he said, man, don't let the media get to your head, because all they're going to want to do is take. And he said, we need voices like yours in the industry for a long time. And so I was like, I've really like chewed that over, man. And so I was sitting in the woods yesterday after getting busted by that buck, and it's just like, man, it's time that if I don't change my mind, my mindset, I'm just gonna quit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe not quit, but it becomes not enjoyable anymore.
Yeah.
When you put pressure on yourself to kill something every single time you go, it's just not going to be enjoyable. You're setting yourself up for high levels of disappointment.
Here's a prime example of how this idea holds true. Find someone who kills a pile of big deer. They probably started with a gun, and then we can see this trend happen a lot. They started with a gun, and then they went to a compound, and then maybe it was bow hunting from the ground, and then they go to a stick bow, and there's always these increasing levels of difficulty, right? If you shot a 120-inch deer every time you went out, you would get bored of shooting that 120-inch deer. We know this to be true because people, as they progress in their hunting careers, start setting higher and higher levels for themselves as they go. And the reason for that is they're after that adventure. And it's so funny to me. It's so funny to me that we were so quick to forget about that pursuit because we're focused on the outcome. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
It happens to me all the time. I feel pressure as a media person to produce kills. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to film. I'm doing it because I love it, and I'm doing it because there's an adventure aspect to it. It's one of the reasons why I don't hunt private land. It has no issue. I have got no issue, no qualms. I'm not speaking a lick of bad luck, a bad juju on anybody who hunts private land. Do it. It's your thing. To me, it's not an adventure, and so I just don't do it.
Well, the part of the reason why I started hunting, on doing the public land hunting and then doing it with a kayak, is because I knew it was going to be the hardest thing that I could probably put myself through. And I wanted to, number one, I'm a very competitive person.
Yep, you and me both.
I'm an Enneagram 8, and so it makes me very, very competitive and very, like with anything. Like, and I still feel like when one of my great friends, like Jared, when I see somebody kill a good deer or have these seasons, like I have to fight the jealousy, right? Because I'm just competitive. I can't help it. But part of the reason why I did this was to combat that competitive nature, because I know the way that I'm doing it and in the place that I'm doing it in Alabama, it's not going to be Illinois, and it's not going to be Ohio. It's not going to be, South Dakota, where you have legitimate chances to kill a booner every time you step in the woods.
Yeah.
I'm hunting in a place that's hard to hunt.
Yeah.
And that's why I did it this way, because I wanted to be legit happy for people. When they kill a big buck over a feeder in Texas, I want to be happy for them.
Yep.
Not jealous of them. There's no reason I could go kill a big buck over a feeder in Texas.
Yep.
If I lived in Texas and I wanted to go out there and do that, but I'm doing the thing that is hardest, and I didn't do it to challenge myself necessarily. I did it to challenge my human nature, which is jealousy. Like I want to be happy for people whenever they find the success, and I've actually built my whole brand on like creating that experience that you want. If that experience you want is to go out on Friday or Saturday and Sunday and sit around a campfire and drink beer with your buddies and maybe shoot a basket rack 5-point, if that's what you're going after, then my Lord, do it.
I'm with you.
That's what it needs to be about for you.
Yeah.
But if you're wanting to go out if your experience is, I want to hike in 14 miles and kill big bucks, doing it the way nobody else does it, then
send it.
Don't settle for less.
I agree.
And so, I guess, I don't know if that's a good way to wrap it up, but I
think it's a great way.
That's kind of what it all comes down to for me. Is you don't have to hunt the way that I hunt. You don't have to do it the way that I do it. We don't even have to think about the same way. We don't have to value the same aspects of hunting for it all to be fun. It all to be great. Like I killed a deer over a corn pile this year. It's been a long time since I've killed a deer over a corn pile, but I did, And if I'm being honest with you, it wasn't everything that I wanted out of a hunt. Like, it was still fun though.
Sure.
It was still great. And I had worked my tail off a couple days before that. This was the Kentucky buck that I killed. And I had shot a deer, put myself in the right position, shot a deer, didn't recover it. I was just wore out, And so I was like, yeah, sitting over a corn pile sounds all right.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good plan to me.
Yeah.
But it all came down to the experience. And, I think you'll learn what that is,
Yeah, absolutely.
for you, the more you do it.
I think the only two traps you can follow, the only two pitfalls of what we're talking about is one, telling someone else what the adventure should be. Neither of us have ever been guilty of that, outside of saying make it your own. And then the second component to this is man, COVID.
Be
followed.
Jared.
Be Jared. Yeah,
Yeah.
the second part is
That's
be
the
Jared.
second part. Just be like Jared.
The first part, so he just went down, so let's try and be a little quieter. The first part is and the second part is just loving that process, right? Like, if you think about like Michael Jordan, or if you think about Dan Infalt, or you think about all these guys who have immense amounts of success. Gary Vaynerchuk. If you don't know any of the guys, if you don't know who Michael Jordan is, you don't know who Dan Infalt is. Gary Vaynerchuk, maybe you know who that is. Those are all guys that ate practice, that ate postseason scouting, that loved the idea of building something, and the achievement is almost not necessarily a letdown, but it was just something along the way, man. It was just something that just happened. Let the process be what the process, or rather, let the end game be what the end game is. Love that process. Wake up every day excited for the adventure. And if you can't wake up excited about what you're going to go do, regardless of what the outcome is, fix your mental mindset.
And here's the reality. Everybody you talked about are the greats, right? They didn't get to be the greats by sitting around.
Right.
Like what you said. They ate practice. They ate scouting, all that stuff. Dan Infalt, you mentioned him. He's a great example, man. The dude has been so consistent, but he's had bad seasons.
Yeah.
He's had bad, like I mentioned the last time I was on Chasing Tails podcast, about how, it's been a while since I've seen Dan kill, and it wasn't a knock on him either. Yeah. But I hadn't seen him kill an early season deer in several years.
Yep.
And then what did he do?
He smashed a freaking stud.
Like 2 days later, or the next day.
Yeah. It was almost ironic.
Yeah, it was weird. So, like, you may not have these situations where, you have seasons like guys like Jared or Andy May or some of these guys. But if you will apply yourself and put yourself in the right situations and work your butt off, I almost guarantee you that it'll eventually happen.
Absolutely. And at the bare minimum, if you're keeping the main thing, and you're doing what you're supposed to, you're going to have a good time along the way. You're going to make memories. You're going to step off the canoe into a hole that's way deeper than your waders, and suddenly your boots are full of water and it's kind of chilly. I'm never going to forget that, right? Like the type 2 fun. It's going to be there along the way. So, well, here's the deal, dude. We have been recording for an hour and 40 minutes. You have got at least 4 hours of driving left to do. It is 8:40 at night? 8:20 at night?
Is it really?
Yeah, dude. It's late. So let's wrap this up. Tell everybody where they can find you if they don't already know. In the woods. with a kayak on the bank. If you see the kayak on the bank, that's where he is.
That's where you can find me, especially right now. No,
that'd be an excellent website handle.
Catch me in
where
the
can
woods.
you find
How
me? InTheWoods.com.
InTheWoods.com. That's actually.
I
wonder if that's I wonder if that domain's taken.
I guarantee you right now, if it wasn't, it's been bought, and it's been bought by Adam. 100%.
That's probably true. That's probably true. That guy buys every domain that he thinks of.
Every domain.
What's it like to be made of money? I wonder.
I don't know. Probably green and dry.
Yeah. Anyways, Southern Ground Hunting everywhere.
That's it.
Yep.
It's simple.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook.
Well, guys,
podcast.
Here's the deal. Parker is I was gonna say once in a lifetime, but that's not true. You're one of a kind, is what I should say. one of a kind fella. I appreciate you taking time out of your day, taking a break. I'm thrilled to be hunting with you in deer camp because, frankly, I find that, and this is no secret in life, when you surround yourself by people who are better at something than what you do, you get better as well. And I can't wait to spend 4 days just kind of hearing you come back to camp, hearing what your game plan is, seeing where you go, seeing what you think of Florida, right, as you go and what your success is.
Yeah, we never hunted together, too, so that'll be cool.
This is actually probably the second longest amount of time we've ever actually hung out.
It's actually the second time we've hung out.
It is. Oh, man. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like, hit subscribe. Go show Parker some love. Go buy a hat from Parker. That's what you should do. If you enjoy this podcast, go buy a hat from Parker. Sign up for Spartan Forge. And until next time, we'll catch you later.